What's up, YouTube? This is Gresnick, and welcome back to another reaction video. Today, we are not reacting to game theory, but film theory. We will be reacting to You Cannot Escape Iron Lung. Great. Um, it's the Markiplier movie. This movie is going to be good. I can bet it. Will I be watching it? Not yet. I probably won't. For a good bit, actually, unless if it's for free on Prime Video. Then I will definitely be watching it as soon as it comes to Prime Video. So, I'm excited. I watched Markiplier play this, the video where he played this when it came out, but that was so long ago that I almost definitely need to rewatch it, but I'm gonna guess this video is gonna be a recap of everything that happened in that. So, as always, like and subscribe to the film theorists and myself. Comment down below anything you want me to react to, because I'll probably react to it. And let's get into the video.
Iron Lung would be hell on the world of Iron Lung would be hell on Earth. Imagine being trapped in a
Not on Earth.
submarine, welded into a metal tube with little hope of escape, sent to the bottom of an alien ocean, and you're not alone down there. But worst of all, even if you do survive, there's nothing to go home to. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the show that's trapped in a submarine exploring the wasteland that is the YouTube video feed these days. Why not go ahead and hit that subscribe button to help us out on that mission, huh? So, we are
Don't
about to be
worry,
given
I
a
have.
huge gift to loyal theorists. This
Oh,
month,
look,
at
you
the
got me
end of
something?
January, YouTube game legend Markiplier is releasing his very own feature film that he wrote, directed, and starred in, Iron Lung. Now, that
It
already is
looks
just
so
awesome,
good.
and seriously, congratulations to Mark for this incredible achievement. To see how his hard work has paid off and resulted in this independent project getting released at such a wide scale brings a tear to my eye when I know that creatives like Mark have worked hard to show Hollywood that they have to take us seriously. Something that also wouldn't be possible without your support. So please go check out Iron Lung when it hits theaters. Like, Mark didn't sponsor this video or anything like that. I just really believe in this
You're just
project
excited.
and
Yeah,
I want it to
everybody's excited.
succeed. Anyway, while Iron Lung is Mark's feature debut, it isn't the first time this story has been told. See, this is
It's based
actually
off
based
of a
on an
game.
independent horror game of the same name released back in 2022, enjoyed by many a YouTuber and streamer. If you need a quick refresher, in the Iron Lung universe, decades ago, the universe was hit with the Quiet Rapture. Every planet and star in the sky vanished, and all that was left were the people living out on space stations. Everyone else disappeared with the planets and the stars. But at the same time, anomalies called blood oceans appeared out in space. Moons that were otherwise empty were now covered in blood. Oceans of it. Thus the blood oceans. Naturally, and with little hope elsewhere, the survivors want to investigate these blood oceans. And you, dear viewer, are chosen to dive deep beneath their surface in a rusty old ship called the Iron Lung. Already, that setup
That
is
name
sick and makes for some good sci-fi. But it gets even
is very
better, or
menacing.
worse, when you realize that the sub you're in isn't made for this kind of exploration. Oxygen depletes quickly, and it starts to fall apart. And while you're photographing the bottom of this ocean, well, you realize that you're not alone down here. There's a creature in these depths with you, and it attacks your ship as the game ends. Pretty awesome, right? And something
Damn
perfect
thing
to make
looks
a
like the
theory about.
Angler from
Which is
Frasier.
why I was actually pretty shocked to realize that we never did one over at our sister location, Game Theory. So with the movie
Really?
releasing this
I'll
month,
never
I
made
thought
one.
that, hey, if Tom isn't gonna do it, I will. This has all of the hallmarks of an incredible independent or analog horror story. And digging into this one, well, I was not disappointed. Yeah, based on what little information we get about this universe, the lore in the games, the snippets of info we get from the movie trailers, the real-world science behind a lot of its ideas, and even the name of the game itself, I can only come to one conclusion. Iron Lung is purgatory, the place between heaven and hell, the living and the dead, and there's no escape. Weld yourself into this submarine, loyal theorists, as we dive into what's really going on in Iron Lung. So, to really understand what's going on here in this movie adaptation, I think we should take a look at the video game it's adapting. When you first start the
Alright.
mission in the game, there isn't a lot to do or even look at. You're
You're
locked in
kind
a
of
small
stuck
metal
in a
tube, and
pretty
the only
small
source of
sub.
information you have is a console at the back of the ship. Here you can search its database, and using that, we learn why we're in this tube to begin with. See, after the Quiet Rapture, a group of survivors formed to collect the remaining materials left on the asteroids and blood moons that remained in the universe. This group was named the Consolidation of Iron, or COI. But they weren't the only group of survivors. Other colonies had other ideas, including the largest space station created by humans, known as Eden, which waged war with the COI. During the following war, some of Eden's membership were captured and imprisoned, and many were forced into the Conviction Realization Program. Basically, this was a fancy-dancy name for prison slave labor, and that is why the player is down here. They were a member of Eden, imprisoned and forced to become part of the COI. Though I have to say, being locked in a submarine like my guy here in Iron Lung would probably give you some time to think, especially about your money. But you can think a bit
Oh
easier.
no, it's an
Thanks to
ad.
the sponsor for today's theory, Chime. Especially because they're
Chime.
offering up to a $350 times higher than the national average, and means that if you put in like $6,000 into one of those accounts,
Where's the end?
Your direct deposit for your paycheck, you can
There it is. Here, guys. Y'all
$50
can
with a new
scan
Chime
this
account by
code.
going to
Maybe. I'm not sure.
chime.com/film theory, or by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code on
Yeah,
the screen.
support
It's just
game
more
theorists
cash
and
on
stuff.
top of all the other money you're going to be
I
saving
mean,
with
film
your
theorists.
high-yield
This is film
savings
theory.
accounts, and you can get your paycheck up to 2 days early. Thank you again to Chime for sponsoring this video, but let's get back
Chime
to
is
the
not
terrifying
sponsoring
truth
this
behind
video.
Iron Lung. And though the COI claims this is a humane way to treat their prisoners, this is basically a death sentence. See, this sub isn't designed to go as deep as we do in the game. They outright admit it towards the beginning of the story, and there's a note left on the floor of the sub that gives us even more details about what we've gotten ourselves into. Quote, "This is not an expedition, it's an execution. When they put you in here, they don't want you to return. If there is still hope, it lies beyond the veil. I will choose to breathe my last breath here at the bottom of the ocean, unseen, unheard, uncontrolled. They will get their execution. I will get my freedom." Whoever wrote this note is fully aware of the COI's intentions, and they are not good. If I were a betting man, this is a note left by the last person on the submarine, most likely another prisoner from Eden. That also checks out with the tone of the entries you can find on the database. For example, they say, quote, "If they send you down in the Iron Lung, they don't give a if you come back, or if this sub comes back." It's very similar in tone and writing style to the note on the floor, so the person writing both the note and the entries are almost certainly the same person. Though that does come with a little bit of a head scratcher, like, did the COI just not clean up the sub after him and just straight up throw in the next prisoner without even checking to see if the last guy did anything to the sub or left anything behind? I mean, hey, I guess it does kind of make sense with the brutal efficiency they seem to be going for. This is most likely because before, they did care about the submarines, but lost a lot of resources by designing them for long-term use. This is proven by one of the log entries you can read about a different sub called the SM-8. Here, we discovered that the SM-8 was a submarine designed for multiple missions, but that it was torn apart by the monsters within the Blood Ocean. The previous convict eventually discovered this and then informed COI about its fate, but no one was surprised or even cared. Brutal, man. But did you catch that? He's told people about the sub being torn apart. He told people about it. That means that he communicated with COI about what happened in the Blood Ocean, which is a pretty big deal. Why? Well, while you might think that any sort of debrief might have just happened over an intercom or something, the communication systems don't work at the bottom of the Blood Oceans.
We're starting to lose radio signal.
That also lines up with the fact that all of the information you're pulling from on the submarine is from a, quote, local database, meaning that there's no network connecting the data collected on the Iron Lung to its headquarters. The only way for that information to get back to COI is by resurfacing the Iron Lung. So any conversation between the COI and the last convict on board the sub had to happen in person. So perhaps he didn't manage to escape after their last voyage. Or like maybe he was executed like he mentioned in the note. But again, the note says that he will take his last breath at the bottom of the ocean. So he escaped while under the surface? It's very confusing and it's not quite lining up, right? And something else I can't quite shake is the fact that this previous prisoner pilot resurfaced at least once once, perhaps multiple times. But the player can barely make it an hour before this entire submarine falls apart? Listen, man, things are just
Ah,
not adding up here, and while that is bothering me, it's also a hint at what's really going on here. For real, something else that stuck with me is just how improbable this entire setup is. Not from a science fiction perspective, but from the ramifications of the science fact based on this world. For example, did you ever wonder if an ocean of blood on a moon like this could even exist? Well, the answer
no.
is, it's complicated. Now, my first thought was like, would this be too thick to even work as like a liquid ocean? But an
No,
actual
that
liquid
should be
ocean of blood
fine.
wouldn't be too thick to work or anything like that. Yeah, as it turns out,
Yeah.
blood has a very similar density to water at
Hmm.
1,060 kilograms per cubic meter versus water's 1,000 kilograms per cubic meter. There just isn't enough of a difference there that the ship would like break instantly, or that it would be too goopy and thick for anything to swim through it or anything like
Yeah.
that. I guess the blood really isn't that much thicker than water. But if we take things a step further, well, it would be very difficult for an ocean of blood like this to exist because of space. Why? Well, several reasons. And the first one of them comes down to where this moon might actually be located. The game
Oh?
calls the moon we're exploring AT5. Very catchy name. And there's no record I could find of a moon or exomoon with that same name. So we're gonna need to use some context clues to figure out where in the vast void of our universe this is taking place, and thankfully there are ways to narrow it down. Using the terminal on the iron lung in the game, we know that this story takes place within our solar system, which already really trims down our options.
Yeah.
We also know that the calendar system in the game uses the founding of the very first off-Earth colony as its year 0, and in our current calendar, this would have been the year 1992. Fun fact, but 1992 was actually when NASA launched the Mars Observer, but that mission failed after communication with the craft was lost 3 days before it was meant to orbit Mars. So using that little bit
Okay.
of information, we can deduce that this is a universe where the Observer succeeded and led to the founding of a colony on Mars. Anyway, now that we know that this moon is in our solar system, we can try to narrow things down even more. But we're quickly gonna run into major problem number 2. See, a blood ocean like this couldn't really exist in our IRL solar system. Why? Well, it comes down to the fact that basically every moon in our solar system has no atmosphere, or at the very
Yeah.
least, a very thin one. Why would
Mhm.
that matter beyond making it impossible to breathe on them? Well, it has to do with how liquids, like blood, would then react. See, without an atmosphere, the surfaces of these moons would basically be vacuums. There's no air or atmospheric pressure on the surface. The lower your atmospheric pressure, the lower the boiling point of liquids is going to be. And
Yep.
in a
This
vacuum where
story.
there's zero pressure, liquids, including blood, would boil instantly. So a moon like this with an ocean
Population
of liquid
boiling.
blood is going to have a hard time existing anywhere on a moon in our solar system. Well, except for
Hmm.
one place. See, while most moons don't
Oh?
really have atmospheres, one of them does. In fact, its atmosphere is even thicker than Earth's. And that would be on Jupiter's moon Titan,
Ah,
which has an
impressive.
atmospheric pressure 1.5 times greater than Earth's. If anything, that would
That's
actually
crazy.
increase the boiling point of water, letting it exist as a liquid at a greater range
Why
of
can't we live on
temperatures.
Titan
Now
then?
that's cool, and the moon in Iron Lung is likely meant to be Titan, but there is still one problem. This liquid ocean of blood isn't gonna be on Titan either. See, the surface temperature of Titan is about negative 290 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh,
About
never
negative
mind. We
179
cannot live
degrees
there.
Celsius. And that's with our sun still in the solar system pumping energy onto it. In the universe of Iron Lung, where all of the stars disappeared, it would quickly become
Yeah, no,
incredibly
everything would
cold
freeze.
everywhere. Blood can freeze solid at just negative 4 or negative 20 degrees Celsius, so us or Markiplier aren't going to be able to get into a liquid ocean of it. It would basically be like jumping onto a planet made of extremely cold concrete. So, okay, that's a lot of information that just seems off about the world of Iron
Yeah.
Lung, from both the game's lore and the real-world science behind this idea. But come on, we are film theory. Is there anything
Yeah.
we can find by analyzing the
You
trailers
can
for
do
this
this, dude.
movie? Well, we're only given a couple minutes of footage total, but yeah, there is a lot here if you know what to look for. Like, Mark's really out here giving us theorists what we need, man. So, first thing I noticed here, Well, in the trailer, we're told that the submarine will reach cruising depth in
roughly 2 minutes.
2 minutes. That's significantly longer than the game's 40 seconds, which could mean one of a few things. Either the submarine technology got significantly better, doubtful since we've concluded that this is the same sub as the game, that they're taking things way
Yeah.
slower in the movie,
Or it's
or that
less
the blood ocean in the film
damage.
is a lot deeper than the one in the game. That may or may not be significant, but it was something I noticed and wanted to point out. Second, and more importantly, well, we hear this interaction in the trailer.
You did test this thing, right?
This is the test.
This right here is telling us that Mark's character is either the first to really use this sub, or was one of the first, and, isn't it interesting that we know for a fact that someone used the sub right before the player in the game? And
Oh,
stepping
he's
back
playing
a
a
second to
person
the note that we
for
find in the
us.
sub in the game, its words do sound familiar if you go and
Interesting.
rewatch the teaser.
They will get their execution. I will get my freedom.
Yeah, parts of the note are in the trailer for the movie, verbatim, with Mark's character saying them. Mark's character here is that previous convict. See, I bet that throughout
Nice.
the plot of this first movie, we're gonna find that Mark is playing a convict from Eden sent to his potential death. He's gonna become aware of what COI is doing, and that they don't really care if he lives or dies. And by the end of the movie, he'll scrawl this note and leave it for the next person trapped in the Iron Lung. And somehow, by the end of the film, he'll escape, finding release from this prison of an existence within the blood ocean and the monsters hiding under it. But while this will offer absolution and escape for Mark's character, well, the cycle will start anew, with a prisoner thrown into the Iron Lung to continue exploring the depths. Another soul forced into this machine, again and again, over and over. Yes, this will be the player
Till the
character from
end
the
of
game, but even
time.
from another meta level, it's each of the streamers and YouTubers and players playing the game again and again, over and over. And that's because whatever is happening here in this game, it's symbolic of purgatory, of being both alive and dead, of being tested and forced to do the impossible over and over again with no real reward. And sure, that makes sense on the surface with how things aren't really making sense scientifically and with how cruel COI is. But if you actually
Yeah,
look into the
makes
symbolism
some
behind
sense.
everything in Iron Lung, it becomes even more clear. See, blood is an interesting choice for these oceans, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it really does fit with the horror aesthetic and adds a lot of
Yeah.
mystery to this sci-fi world. And let's be
That
real,
could
the
just
phrase
be
blood ocean
water.
is just legit really rad, not gonna lie. But
Yeah, honestly, it's
symbolically,
cool.
blood has an important role in several religions and cultures throughout history. The blood of Christ is an important symbol in multiple sects of Christianity, and several other ancient cultures shed blood in rituals that symbolized giving their life to appease deities. In fact, the term bloodshed literally means death, to take someone's life. The entire premise of Iron Lung has its characters wading into an ocean of blood, as clear a symbol of death that you can come up with while still living. This is symbolizing a limbo stage between life and death. And I mean, this isn't really the only religious symbol here, right? The quiet rapture and the disappearance of most life in the universe is a direct reference to the rapture from Christianity, where true believers ascend into heaven to be with God. And I mean, come on, the main character is literally from a colony called Eden, as in the Garden
Yeah,
of
the
Eden,
garden.
where Adam and Eve were said to have been created by God, and from where they were banished by God. As a member of the Eden colony, the main character here has also been banished and cursed, forced out of paradise and into a literal purgatory after the quiet rapture. And the final piece of this puzzle, the thing that tells us what's really going on here in this story, well, it comes down to the name of this game and to this movie. Iron Lung. So, back before the 1950s, there was a terrible disease known as polio. This was a truly awful scourge on this planet,
I
which
forgot about
could often
this.
lead to weakened muscles or even paralysis. And worst of all, one of the muscles polio could paralyze was the diaphragm. This is the muscle that helps your lungs inhale and exhale. It helps you breathe. Thankfully, these days, modern medicines and vaccines have more or less eliminated polio. But before that
no more
vaccine was
polio.
developed, getting polio could often be fatal, or at the very least lead to lifelong, life-ruining side effects. And doctors did everything they could to help those with the most severe polio symptoms survive, including creating a machine that could help you breathe. What they ended up
The
with was
Iron Lung.
basically a large horizontal metal tube that could assist the breathing of
Just
people
the
who
same
couldn't
as our
do it
submarine.
themselves. It was a complicated piece of equipment, but it basically became an artificial diaphragm, which is how it was given the name Iron Lung. Yeah, this name wasn't chosen for the game and the movie randomly because it sounded metal and cool and awesome. It was inspired very much by this real-world device. Now, for the most part, the Iron
Yeah,
Lung was intended to be a temporary fix. People would stay
and it
in
ended
there
up
until
being
they
permanent.
recovered enough to breathe on their own again. But sadly, this wasn't the case for everyone. Some people stayed in these machines for the rest of their lives, dying in them despite the best efforts of the medical professionals helping them. Some even lived for years and years, decades and decades. Like Paul Alexander, who contracted polio at the age of 6 and lived in an iron lung until he finally passed away in March of 2024. And while this machine was incredible and it helped people survive, well, I don't think anyone would argue that it was a pleasant experience. You are basically
Definitely
trapped
not.
in this metal tube with only your head left uncovered. And that's very similar to what we're seeing here in Iron Lung.
You're stuck in a
Right?
small
Trapped in this
tube.
metal tube with barely any contact with the outside world. In and of itself, it's not a death sentence, but it isn't a cure or a savior either. For so many people forced into an iron lung, survival was only possible inside of the machine, and leaving it was certain death. It was a cruel choice, a terrible fate, and one that many might want to find an escape from, just like we see in the Iron Lung story. In the note left behind by the previous conflict, it says,
If there is still hope, it lies beyond the veil.
Beyond the Veil. Sounds ominous, right? And on top of that, Beyond the Veil is the achievement players unlock by finishing the
Oh, that
game's
just
story. After you take
literally
all of the
concrete
pictures and the
evidence that
monster
death
breaks through the
is the
iron
freedom.
lung and ends your life. If being killed is what brings you beyond the veil, so to speak, then the hope of escape here is death.
They will get their execution. I will get my freedom.
Man, it's really dark, but for this character, for the protagonist of Iron Lung, both the movie and the game, the only escape they have here is the embrace of death, just like so many trapped in those real-world iron lungs. But with that escape, they're finally able to leave purgatory, to escape the limbo between life and death. It's a very dark, complicated message, but one that is also incredibly powerful if you look at it from the right direction. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And
Yeah. Man, this movie's gonna be good. Yeah, it's been a long time since I watched that video, so I do not remember. That was a very good summary of it, though. I'm gonna go watch that video. Well, as always, like and subscribe to the Film Theorists and myself. Comment down below anything you want me to react to, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.